I'm not going to shut myself out this time. So, anyway, entrance music. Right, so I'm going to talk about Malaclypse's Lament, which is the film I was most recently involved in making. I'm going to talk about a lot of the background and inspiration behind it. That's going to take up the bulk of the presentation. There will be some talk about the film as well, but really it's going to be to try and understand all the ideas behind it. We're going to talk about making the film from pre through to post-production, and also what challenges there were, how we overcame them, how we compensated around them, and any interesting things I learned along the way. So, the film itself is based on an extract from the Principia Discordia, which is the Bible of the Discordian pseudo-religion. So, what is Discordianism? It's a parody religion. It was invented in the 1960s by members of the then counterculture movement. And it was influenced by Eastern philosophies like Zen Buddhism, Taoism and so on. And it focuses on chaos as being the ultimate truth underneath everything. So Discordianism holds that chaos is all that really is, and that any meaning that human beings ascribe to anything is in some sense artificial and entirely subjective. And there's a lot of serious points that are dressed up as a joke. So this is the yin-yang. This is a symbol widely used in relation to Eastern philosophies. I'm sure you probably all recognise it. The yin-yang symbolises that darkness cannot exist without light. The opposites combine to make a whole, and that darkness always contains some light, and vice versa. This is the Discordian equivalent. Obviously it's based on the yin-yang, but it's called the hodgepodge, or the sacred cow. Now, in this, the forces of order are represented by the pentagon, and the forces of disorder are represented by the golden apple of discord. Note that, like the yin-yang, these forces are, or at least should be, in perpetual balance. Now, this is one edition of the Principia Discordia. As you can see, it's got a very nice sacred cow on the front, lovely. And now, to try to explain Discordianism, it's going to be best to give a few examples. There have been a number of artists who've identified as Discordians over the years. Notably, Deanne Ward, you've probably all heard of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. And the KLF, who I thought you might not have heard of, so I thought I'd focus on the KLF. Now, the KLF were an acid house duo. They're from the late 80s and early 90s. As their burgeoning rave culture became mainstream, the KLF became one of the biggest names. And it's interesting to draw parallels as well with the 60s counterculture and the 80s rave culture, because they were both about saying, well, you do it this way, but we don't actually want to abide by your rules, we want to do it our way. And so it's kind of quite relevant that the KLF were influenced by the 60s counterculture and then such a big part of the 80s rave culture. Now, as I say, the KLF did become one of the biggest names in rave. They were, in the mainstream charts and everything, but the thing is that they were at least partly joking. They'd released a book called The Manual, How to Have a Number One the Easy Way, which explained how to manipulate the charts and the record buying public by applying a musical formula. Now, the KLF had several number one records under a number of different names. Their biggest hit came in 1991 with a song called 3 AM Eternal. Now, such was its success that they were invited to play at the Brit Awards in 1992. The version of the song that they played was slightly different to the one that topped the charts. they did. They never played together against the KLF, and they deleted their entire back catalogue, meaning that until the advent of the internet, it was impossible to get hold of their music. After firing machine gun blanks into the audience at the Brits, they left a dead sheep outside the post-event party. They later burned £1 million, which is something they reportedly regretted in the end. So, why have I told you this tale? To illustrate that Discordianism attempts to make its points by forcing people to take notice and by highlighting the underlying chaos by being unpredictable. So it was important that the film embedded a spirit of chaos. So when we got on to pre-production, there were certain things we had to look at. Research and related material, including Robert Anton Wilson and Grant Morrison. Now, Robert Anton Wilson was one of the original Discordians. He co-wrote the 1975 novel, The Illuminatus Trilogy. That book contains a fabricated history of the Discordian Society and explains in a very convoluted way how the Discordian Society secretly control everything. The Illuminati, for example, is just a front for the Discordian Society. Much of the current interest in the Illuminati that's all over the internet even today is a direct result of the nonsense that Wilson put in that particular book. Grant Morrison is a comic book author and a chaos magician. He's probably mental, to be fair, but he has a lot of interesting things to say about symbolism in culture and so on. Now, the first two lines of the extract that were used, which I'll show you now, we look at the world through windows on which have been drawn grids. Different philosophies use different grids. A culture is a group of people with rather similar grids. Through a window we view chaos and relate it to the points on our grid, and thereby understand it. The order is in the grid. Now this is talking about how the same thing can look different to different people. The idea was to show the same people in the same place, ordered and sensible, and then disordered and chaotic. So people working 9 to 5 will fit themselves into the corporate world to earn themselves enough money to go out at the weekend and be drunken and disinhibited. Now the intention was that the contrasting scenes would show the same individuals, or at least people who could be the same individuals, in two different states. Were they truly themselves when they were going to work and being all sensible, or were they truly themselves when they were drunken and falling over at the weekends? Are they the same people? What is the true nature of identity? So this, oh hold on, I was meant to be going back and forth between these. So these are examples of the sort of thing I was trying to go for. Now obviously these are different people, but the idea would be from the same angle, could be the same people. There was also an intention to use liquid water and gaseous water as a sort of metaphor there as well. It's like, well, it's all water, which is real water. Now this brings us on to Alfred Korzybski. Korzybski founded the field of general semantics. This is based on ideas that human words can limit our understanding of the world around us. So as soon as we give something a label, we don't need to think about it anymore. As an example of this, I mean, the United States of America is brilliant at doing this. They will take really complicated ideas and come up with a short buzzword for it, and you don't have to think about it anymore. So, collateral damage, friendly fire, 9/11, war on terror. You know, these are all really complex ideas, and as soon as you break it down to that, you think, oh, it's a terrorist. You know, that's it. That's all we need to think about it now. So, as soon as we do give something away, we don't need to think about it anymore. So I could say that this is a chair, which would be true, but then I could show you 1,000 chairs that look different. Obviously, they're not all the same thing, but language reduces them to equivalence in one sense, when in many senses they're not equivalent. So Korzybski sought to eliminate false equivalence by creating a version of English called E prime. Now the only real difference is that certain forms of the verb to be are removed. So you can't say, this film is good. You can say, I like the film, or the film made me laugh. You know, you're giving an opinion rather than an objective value judgment on it. And this method of speaking can help to reduce conflict and reduce dogmatic thinking. Robert Anton Wilson wrote several non-fiction books using E prime. Now, Korzybski is known for the phrase, the map is not the territory. What this means is that we should not confuse our simplified representations of reality with reality itself. In order to make sense of the world, we naturally simplify and categorise things. It's usually helpful and appropriate, but it can lead to dangerously wrong points of view. For example, in the extreme, making generalisations about a type of person can lead to genocide. So nothing is anything else. Comparisons can be drawn for metaphorical purposes, but ultimately the only thing that something is itself. A map cannot be wholly accurate without, unless it describes precisely every atom of a thing. So I wanted to refer to this, and so my idea was to take a painting of Southern Down and then a video of it. Both pictures are recognisable, but in fact both are incomplete representations of the place. Only by physically going there and standing there would you fully understand what it is to be there, what the place is. So, themes and recurring motifs that try to involve order versus disorder, duality, opposites combining to make a whole, like the yin-yang or the sacred cow. On this next slide, this is a photo from the location recce, and the idea was then to visually mirror that, to sort of imply opposites, dualities, and so on. And that's the result in the finished film. So I think it's pretty successful and very similar to the plan. So happy with that. Now, the biggest challenge, as I'm sure you can all imagine from all the things I've just talked about, was covering so much ground. On the original script, there were 28 separate scenes, each to be shot in a different location. In this section here, there could have been 5 or 6 brief shots combined to make the point. For practicality, it was reduced to 2. A zoom in on a painting of, in the end, the Malaclypse, dissolving into a video of the real thing to specifically refer to Korzybski's "The map is not the territory." Now, it's easy to assume with the name Discordianism and with all this sort of focus on chaos that it just promotes disorder for the sake of it. But this is not the case. Here are 4 possible ways of applying the order-disorder dichotomy. So, order can be creative or destructive, as can disorder. Discordianism holds that we're in a world where order is imposed over any consideration of whether it is of benefit to people. So with modern bureaucracy, as an excellent example, people may be left without things they need because they didn't fill in a form correctly. Now, in this bureaucratic mindset, order of all sorts is seen as good, and disorder of all sorts is seen as bad. Discordianism views good and bad as human constructs. Creation and destruction are real things, and so creation is to be encouraged, and destruction discouraged. This column here shows the world as it is now, and this row is how Discordians think it should be. So we need order, we need disorder, but we don't need things being destructive. No need for that. So to illustrate this, I'm just going to digress slightly, just to show that on the script, under each scene I wrote the purpose as to what it was meant to represent. The reason for that being that because we've taken quite abstract ideas and then abstracted them further, there was a danger of changing it and losing the point. So I wrote the point of each thing underneath so that if any of the scenes were changed, we'd make sure they stuck to the point. Which, yeah. So, to illustrate this, I wanted to show one scene for each of the 4 states and show how both order and disorder can be desirable and undesirable depending on the circumstances. This was eventually cut to just 2 scenes showing good disorder and good order for reasons of practicality, and those were children playing chaotically in a playground and trains arriving and leaving on time. Now, this next sequence here, initially called for demonstrations of how the same thing can appear different depending on one's perspective. So there's going to be police being helpful, police being riot police, football supporters, being cheerful and part of a family, and then like opposing football supporters being really intimidated by that. So, all a matter of perspective. I mean, in the end, that was just cut down to one scene, which was a stop-motion policeman who you'd naturally assume to be a force for good, attacking and robbing a passerby. So the expectation then is subverted by the reality. And now on to production. In the end, there were 15 scenes to be created, all of these listed here. Some scenes could be done without any outside assistance, but some were more complex. I'm going to show you these 4 scenes to refresh your memories. So, the man and woman duality scene, the couple scene, just examples of the artist's work that I had to get permission from, and then the stop motion policeman.
The artificial concept of no relation is the heuristic principle, and will hence, say unenlightened Westerners, be true. It is what we Arisians call the anaristic illusion, and through it some chaos appears ordered, and some appears disordered. In the moment, and the capital T truth that
Right, so my initial plan for the man-woman duality scene, which was there Alice making the cake and lifting weights, it was to originally show a man doing something traditionally feminine and a woman doing something traditionally masculine. I spoke to a male student at a beauty course on the college here. He initially seemed keen, but then he stopped replying to my texts. He probably decided he didn't want to do it. I had tried to find friends of friends who could be the woman doing something masculine. My first choice was a female kickboxer, had ideas of her sort of punching bags in slow motion and all this kind of thing. She was keen, but then she had some personal issues and she dropped out, which meant I had to go on to the second choice, which was Alice, who you saw there. No, I mean, she does lift weights, she does like baking cakes, so it does fit the stereotypes of men and women, but I think it would have a lot more impact, you know, if it had fit with the original plan. The scene with the couples was difficult just because I had to coordinate 4 actors. Luckily my friend John and his girlfriend Chrissy volunteered. They helped me get in touch with Oliver and Hugh. I'd approached several gay couples by this point with no success, so it was quite a relief to finally get that sorted. I had to get permission from Rowan Huntley. She did the painting of the Malaclypse. She was initially a bit wary. She wanted assurances that her work wouldn't be shown in a bad light or anything like that. She eventually agreed, and her and her partner met me in the Gower to film the cliffs. Now, it was very windy. We had a camera with a manual zoom on it, so getting a smooth zoom sadly proved impossible. So, I mean, that's definitely taught me the value of having an automatic zoom. That's definitely something you should have. And then the next artist I spoke to was Thomas Medicus. He made the Emergence Lab, which is that cube that rotates, showing different things depending on point of view. I mean, I thought really that was a perfect choice to illustrate how apparent order can arise from chaos. Now, I had initially been inspired by the following video, which shows a special type of pendulum. I'll show you that quickly now. So they're all different lengths, and as it goes along, different patterns emerge in it quite unexpectedly. I had looked into getting one of these, but there's only a handful of universities in the world that have got them. And it is possible, apparently, to make one yourself for like about £50 worth of materials. But to do that, you need to be quite good at carpentry, which I'm not. So I thought, no, that's not going to happen. And then, yeah, Thomas Medicus gave his blessing to use Emergence Lab, and to be honest, I think that's a better way of showing the point. So then the stop motion policeman. Now this was composited from using 130 odd still images, a green screen and a Cardiff street to use the background. In the final film I've removed the colour from the background to make sure it's completely non-intrusive. Now I had been worrying about how long this would take to edit, but I found there's a few easy shortcuts that made it much more manageable. In Premiere Pro it's possible to pre-select the duration of a clip before you import it. So I selected all the images, set a duration of 2 frames, so 12 frames a second, and posted them all into the timeline. Keying out the green was a lot easier than I expected to. Using the Ultra Key function, I was able to get rid of the green with pretty much just one click. But I mean, as you can see, there's a lot of different shades of green, so couldn't get rid of all of them that easily. I thought, well, it's good enough. Could be better, but it worked, I think, so I was happy with that. Now, I found after I'd done this to one frame, there's a function where you can copy the attributes and then just paste them to the other frames en masse. So what I thought could have taken forever was just a case of copy, select all those, paste, bang, done. Couldn't be quicker. So that is a really, really useful thing if you're ever doing editing and you need to do the same edit to more than one scene. Copy and paste attributes. It's an absolute lifesaver. And this brings us squarely into post-production. This is the timeline view of the entire film as it was in Premiere Pro. Now, you can see at times there's up to 8 video tracks being used simultaneously. Now, where that blue line is actually this shot from the credits. Because I wanted different parts to come in at different times. So they sort of fold in, then fold in, then fold in. So that meant that each part had to be a separate layer, hence there's 8 video tracks. Another thing that I really learned the value of was the ability to create multiple sequences within a project. So here you can see the stop motion sequence, and it's separated out from the rest of the project. This is the main project bit here, and these are all separate sequences. Now, the main benefit of doing that, doing them separate from the main timeline, is you've got a completely blank canvas. So you can't accidentally copy over something else. And if you've got any sort of relatively complicated edit, trying to put more complicated edits on top of it is a recipe for disaster. Copy over stuff, it's a nightmare. So you do that, you export it, and then you've got a new block of video that you can import and just use as one block. So it makes it much more manageable. I mean, if you go back to there, you'll see all of these are just single blocks, and that's because I've composited them to make it easier to work with. Now, I did the same thing with this train sequence. You can see there's 4 different videos running all at once. Now, another advantage here is that if you're running 4 videos at once, it's going to be taxing on your computer. So if you render it to one single video, you'll find it runs much more smoothly. And this sequence generally, I think, is the sequence in the film that I'm most proud of. It's intended to illustrate when order is a good thing. And the sound played a really big part in making this work so well. I didn't actually realise I'd need to do any sound until the day before the film was due in. So that night, I found whatever I could on free sound websites to accompany all the scenes as best I could. For the train sequence, though, I wanted something that sounded like clockwork. And so to finish, this will be the last bit I talk about now. This is the part I'm very pleased with. So I found a number of train-related sound effects and noises, and I arranged them. This is a 10-track audio timeline. So you've got, that's like a diesel rumble, so that just acts as a bed and just to keep it going. This is different train yard noises, there's sort of diesel rumbles and pops and whistles and that kind of thing. And then each of these is a separate train whistle or pop. Now, I didn't edit any of these sounds, this is how I found them. And then if you watch the line travelling on the video, it'll help understand where each sound comes from. That's pretty much all I've got to talk to you about. I hope it was entertaining, I hope it was informative. Any questions you've got, I'll take those in just a couple of minutes. Before I do that, there's one other thing I want to talk about, not directly related to the presentation. That is Cardiff Independent Film Festival. Now, you may be aware that Cardiff Independent Film Festival is held once a year. And the main event is going to be from the 22nd to the 24th of April at Chapter Arts Centre. Now, go on there, there's loads of brilliant short films, features and so on. I've seen a lot of them, they're really very good. But later this week, on Thursday, there's an event here at the college. 7:30, Thursday evening, free entry. So you've got a feature film called The Stranger. That's been made by a local Welsh filmmaker. He had no real funding or support. There's a few short films, possibly some animations as well. Now, Craig Howells, the director, is going to be there. He's going to be able to answer any questions that you've got, so it'll be really good for all of us to help learn how we can make films on a short budget. So I think that could be really, really valuable to go along to. So it's 7:30, it's free of charge, and there's free booze.
Ooh.
So that's free booze.
Free booze.
Okay, so yeah, I hope to see you all there. And if you've got any questions about the presentation as a whole.
Any questions?
Only about the map being disclosing, because it's a navigation tool, so it's not sort of, it's just showing, it's supposed to be, I would say, it's not supposed to be a view of what the thing really is.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
but not just literal maps though, because we make maps of everything. By calling this a chair, I'm making a map of what it is.
Yeah,
Because actually it's plastic, it's got this, it's got that, it's got so many things you can talk about, but we make a map of it, we call it a chair.
Not just the map itself, it's
Everything's maps,
Yeah.
everything's metaphors, even language itself.
it was just that, so everything else was cool.
How long do you think to edit?
What, the whole film? It's 20 or 30 hours, I think. I don't know, I did it in stages, because as you know, I had issues with the person who was meant to do the editing, and I thought, well, I'll do an edit as I go along, just to try and keep on top of it, and I'm glad I did, to be frank. So yeah, I just kind of put it together as it came in, really. But yeah, probably 20 or 30 hours.
And how long have you been interested in this whole topic, Discordianism?
Discordianism. Well, that's interesting. I guess I came across it in about 2011, 2012, and I'd actually gone a little bit mad. I'd started believing some really, really quite out there things. And by reading Robert Anton Wilson, he talks about things like how beliefs are just that. I mean, particularly in the world that we live in now, for any particular opinion you want to have, you can look it up on the internet and find enough evidence to support your opinion and be like, yep, this must be right, look at all the evidence I've found. But actually, you can do that for any point of view. And so it really helped me realise that having concrete beliefs is not necessarily a good thing, and you should believe what suits you best at the time. So it really helped me in that way.
Yeah, wow. And if you could do it again, if you did the project again, would you still have chosen, or that topic?
Well,
the complex issues behind it.
Yeah, basically what happened was Emma just told us the day before, bring in a bit of text that means something to you. She didn't say why. So I actually brought in the Illuminatus trilogy and was like, I'll find something in there. Now the Illuminatus trilogy is brilliant, but it's mental. It's completely mental. I mean, Robert Anton Wilson, when he was writing it, before that he used to be the editor for Playboy magazine, and a lot of crazy people used to send in letters about different conspiracy theories. And so when he was writing the book, he was like, right, well, what